Welcome to this podcast, Holistic Creators, where we share our unique and universal stories about shaping the future for the 4 Ps: people, planet, purpose, and profit. My name is Swanet Kunze. I'm a mental coach and your host of this show. My intention for this show is to inspire you on your path to a holistic future. So welcome. Hello and welcome to my podcast, Holistic Creators. My name is Swanet and I'm your host. Today, I have a very special guest, a global credibility expert, Mitchell Levy. Welcome to my show.
It's great to be here. Thank you. I think I spoke over you at the beginning, so we'll see if that comes out. We'll leave it as is.
Yeah, so I'm really curious, and I'm sure my audience is as well. What is your definition for credibility? Because I think we all have kind of a concept about that, but it's really important to understand what is your definition and how this came up for you. Give us a little bit of an overview about that.
Sure. It's very funny. We all think that we're credible. We all think that we're accountable. And the answer is we sometimes make believe in our mind who we really are and how we show up. What I ended up doing is I went on my own private Napoleon Hill journey where I interviewed 500 thought leaders on credibility. And I was shocked and surprised. I ended up getting a life mission, didn't know I needed to change the one I had. And the definition, and I'm a visual thinker, so I'm going to I'll share a slide as well. And for those who are listening, I'll talk it over. So credibility is the quality in which you're trusted, known, and liked. So credibility is the quality in which you're trusted, known, and liked. And we understand what the word trust is, and trust are, and by the way, for those who are listening, there are 10 values that are associated with credibility. And so there are 4 associated with trust. It's being authentic. It's having external integrity. It's vulnerability and being coachable. Now, on being known, what we often think about, because we know the phrase know, like, trust, but in reality, the way we interact with other humans, it is trust, know, like, right? And so on known, it's not that I know of you, it's that I know you. And if I know you, one of the things I want to know to be credible, I want to know that you're a servant leader. I want to know your internal integrity. What do you think about for yourself? And I want to know your intent and commitment, and I want to make sure that's to do the right thing. And then on the likable part, here's what's really cool is I unraveled a very simple formula to be likable. And there are 2 values there. It's to share your stage and to show respect. And so it's very interesting when I think about this. And now when I finished my research in August of 2020, I ended up doing a summit, which had about 800 people in October. So I officially launched this in October. In 2021, I did a TEDx, which was the 28th most popular. It's called We Are Losing Our Humanity. And I'm tired of watching it happen. And so I've been deploying credibility in a number of different areas. And I continue to, the truth is, I'm still coachable. I'm still vulnerable. I'm still learning. And I'm continually evolving how I deliver this thing. And I'll leave you with one last thought. I've said this from the beginning, but I didn't actually start practicing it to about a month ago. So what I've said at the beginning, that credibility is a journey, not a destination. So if credibility is a journey, I need to treat what I do with credibility as a verb, not as a noun. And so all the go-to-market strategies had me focusing on credibility as a noun, as the event, the person, place, or thing. And now I need to, I've been doing a little bit on the side, but now I'm very much. So for instance, we're doing a series of webinars and they're focused on credibly as a verb, using ChatGPT and then fill in the blank in your business as a female entrepreneur, as a solopreneur, as a CEO of a Fortune 500. So think about the fact that I'm now using that as a verb, and specifically the noun is ChatGPT for a specific audience.
Yeah. So you said this is like a journey, and you are in this journey as well, as I think most of the people are. And if we are not, like, how have you been before? Like, perhaps it is also the term that you're using, being dubious. In my world, it would be like living the shadow part, but I can think it's kind of the same. Like when we are not in integrity, when we are not trustful and not known and not liked, but just the opposite. Do you have a story about that from your past? Because I think we all have a story about that.
Hmm. Yeah, so what I mentioned, so I've done two TEDx's, and both of them have caused me to take a very in NLP perspective, a serious pattern interrupt, right? Because when you do a TEDx, if you do it right, it's different than any other talk. I've done 3,000 plus talks. TEDx's are different than anything else. And so the first one, I publicly said that I had my first male mentor was hedonistic, narcissistic, and taught me a bunch of stuff that took me a while to unlearn. And I thought I had unlearned it all until I started doing the second TEDx. And I realized that there was another lesson that I needed to be taught. And so so let me summarize that my first male mentor taught me valuable negative lessons that I deployed my entire life and took me 36 years to unlearn. Okay. But I didn't realize that till I did my second TED Talk. And so what ended up happening is when the last time I worked for a corporation was 1997. I left to actually start doing the entrepreneurial journey, specifically e-commerce during the dot-com days. And when I was at Sun Microsystems, and I was there for 9 years, I was told on two different occasions that if I was better managing people, that I would be promoted up to VP, SVP at the company. I probably could have started my own firm. And these are my bosses who just were disappointed that I didn't treat people with the respect that I needed to. And that came from the my first male mentor who basically taught me things about how to manage people, which were completely wrong, right? And what was interesting, when I did my second TED Talk, it was during the midst of COVID. We really didn't know much about it at the time. And so when I was doing the first one, I was traveling a lot. I was at people's events. And by the way, I found magic words. I'll give you a hint. Here's some magic words. When I was at somebody else's event, I'd call them a week or two ahead of time, knowing I'd be at their event. And I'd say, hey, listen, I just got approved to do this TEDx. Can I practice? Can you find time on your stage to practice? Those are magic words. That opened up the door. At any place I was, somebody said, yes, of course, please do. During the second TEDx, when I was practicing, it was during COVID, nobody was traveling. So I ended up doing 30 interviews or 30 sessions like this. Just want to like I would say, hey, do you mind? I want to practice. I'd love to get your feedback. And so I'd practice here this way. And it turned out there was a guy by the name of Ted Loud. Ted was my 10th reviewer. And one of the things he said, now you threw out the word dubious, so let me just say, so to be a credible human means that we're just going through life and we're coachable, we're servant leaders, we have the intent and commitment to do the right thing, we're vulnerable, we show respect for others, like just good humans, right? The opposite of credible, because I needed an arch rival, is the term I came up with was dubious. The reason I did that term, I use that term, is because I'm uncomfortable about the nature of humanity saying you are either going to do great and go to heaven or you're going to do bad and go to hell. Or in the United States, You're either red or blue, and you can hate the other side. That's okay. Or, you know, one football team versus another, where they get into fights and people die in stadiums because, you know, absolute silliness, right? And so I came up with the word dubious because I didn't want it to be as black or white. What I want to say is that I occasionally do things which are dubious. Now, specifically, let's talk about this podcast. I had accidentally, somebody had booked me back-to-back meetings. We had a specific time to start. I normally like to come 10 minutes early. I not only came about a minute. Now, I did ask you if that was okay, and you said, fine, we'll start when we start. I'm like, oh, pressure relief valve. So I came a minute after the top of the hour. I felt bad, but I had permission. And I still wasn't ready. I still need another 5-6 minutes so I can, you know, run to the bathroom before the podcast. I can collect my thoughts, get the notes out of the way. You gave me permission and you were kind enough to do that. And I let you know ahead of time. So I felt like I wasn't really being dubious, but technically I'm being a little bit dubious. The fact that I wasn't there 10 minutes early, that I wasn't ready, that I wasn't 100% there for you, me showing up in such a way that I'm paying you the homage you deserve because you're my podcast host. You're hosting me. You're helping to, you're sharing your stage, a credible thing. So what I did, you know, probably just 20 minutes ago was a little bit on the dubious side. Now, I'm going to say it's not really bad. You said it was okay. It was fine. I feel a little bit bad, and I'll let it go. And I'll try to make sure my people don't schedule me so tight going forward, right? So, but it's, you know, I'm not going to go to hell because I, you know, showed up a minute late and needed 5 minutes to sort of put my stuff together. So I like the word dubious because dubious implies that it's not exactly credible, but it's not necessarily bad, right? So that's the way I'm thinking about it. So what happens is, in this particular case, I'm my own accountability partner. But we should go through life with accountability partners. And when our accountability partners tell us we did something that was dubious, it's how we respond to that determines how credible we are. All right. So anyhow, I'm doing the interviews, or actually getting feedback from 30 different people, and Ted Lau says something interesting. I'm talking to him about credibility and dubiousness, and he says he just slams something at me. He goes, Mitchell, do you realize that the people who are dubious are not dubious on purpose? They're dubious because they were taught that by somebody else. They actually are innocent because the people before them taught them to actually act that way. And really, if you're credible, you're coachable. And if you're coachable, every now and then you got to realize there's this significant aha moment that's going to, like, if you're not smart, you're going to let it go. So many times we let that, you know, that perfect tip, that perfect opportunity, that perfect learning growth opportunity go. And I thought about this for a while, and the next day I realized, normally what happens is I think about it, I write it down, I think about it, I go to sleep, I wake up, and I got my massive aha moment. So I let my processing when I'm sleeping do. And what I realized in that next day, what Ted made me realize is that the last lesson I needed to learn from my first male mentor 36 years prior, that last lesson I needed to learn was forgiveness. And I needed to forgive not just him, because I had forgiven him a while ago. I needed to forgive me. And it was, I don't know, it's fascinating when you think, like, I really did the first TED Talk. I thought I was over the first male mentor, and I realized, no, I was still holding it. I was still holding, like, me for being silly enough to do that. I hadn't forgiven me yet. And so I think the cool part about going through life as a credible human is that you're always open for gifts that come your way. And you never know where those gifts come from. Sometimes they come from people you call mentors. Sometimes they come from friends. Sometimes they come from people you call mentees. Sometimes They come from the person who is at the lowest level in your perception in the world, and they give you the highest gift that you just didn't expect to have happen. And if you're not open to it, if you're not ready for it, you're going to miss out on the gems or I typically use the word aha moments, but you're going to miss out on the gems that come your way.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for also bringing this out, how we got started today. And I think the best thing is to really be aware. And you said being the own credibility accountant and seeing, okay, perhaps in this moment I behave in a certain kind of way. Am I really walking the talk? And for me, I had this kind of moment some weeks ago. Like, I feel for myself, I'm somehow a role model for creating the future for humanity, and therefore I have certain kind of values, like, you know, being authentic, being integral, being having behavior of sustainability. And I figured out that, yeah, sometimes I'm not really true to myself, and therefore not true to the people that are listening to me. And because I'm not buying stuff from the supermarket in plastic and not going to the organic market, for example, yeah, and it sometimes comes like step by step, and then, oh, I felt like, listen to myself. What are you doing? And this was an aha moment, that we always need somewhere a mirror. And it was a friend of mine who said, like, listen, you're telling people this, and now I see that this is in your household. And I said, thank you so much for bringing my awareness back. And yeah, being coachable, as you tell that, and being open-minded, that there other people sometimes see where we have our blind spots, or where we don't walk the talk. And you had also someone who was mentioning something that was for you this kind of aha moment. It was like, okay, forgiveness is important for the other person, but especially for ourselves, as we all make mistakes. But are we stuck in that, or are we willing to forgive and learn, and then change and do the transformation to become more credible? Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, I love that story. Yeah. If you're focused on sustainability and somebody goes in your house and they see plastic, you're like, oops, yeah, that's a problem, isn't it?
Yeah, so you said a little bit about your journey. So most people don't know you yet, but would like to know you a little bit better. So you started with your first boss, who was someone who told you how to be more on the dubious side than on the credible side. What have you done until now? You said 36 years in between until now, but there have been, I think, a lot of experiences, a lot of teachers that helped you to become the person who you are now. So can you give us a little bit more details about that?
Let me say what this helps establish credibility in the minds of other people. So what I'll do is, let me share, it'll be about 60 seconds, and I'll share all the stuff. It's sort of like the George Carlin, here's all the stuff that I've done, but then you could pick one and we could dive into more detail. So okay. I have been in Silicon Valley for 36 years, happily married for 33, have a 25-year-old who in Silicon Valley parlance successfully launched. I have launched 20 odd companies since 1997. Prior to that, I was in corporate for 13 years. One of the set of companies is a book publishing company. We've published over 750 books. I sat on the board of a NASDAQ listed company for 9 years. I've run 4 different CEO networking companies. I've run 4 different conferences for the largest conference company on the planet. I currently am part of the Marshall Goldsmith's 100 Coaches organization, so I do executive coaching. And then on the credibility side, this, as I mentioned before, I went on this journey to learn what credibility was, and I thought I was actually doing the journey so I could have a book. You know, Napoleon Hill, 500 Millionaires, Think and Grow Rich, Mitchell Levy, 500 Thought Leaders, Credibility Nation. And the the end product was a life mission that I got this is in July of 2020, that like I said, changed who I was and what I'm focused on. But along the way, lots of specific activities. So is there anything in there that you'd like to dive a little bit more into detail on?
So for me, this seems even like a common topic. Like, you are one that is a thought leader, someone who is in transformation and bringing people into awareness and create something like a credible humanity or future for humanity and credibility. So I wouldn't even see that. Of course, these were different topics or different experiences, but for me, it seems like there is one red line through all of that. Yeah. So, and let's then start with, you had this moment of, you figured out what is your mission. And there have been steps so that you figured out what is your mission. Let's go with that.
I'm going to share I'll share a slide again for people to see. And if you're just listening, imagine a scale. And on the scale is this really heavy, it's really weighted down. And on that part, I call that Dubious Nation. And what's lifted in the air is Credibility Nation. And just the generic thought on that is simply that I believe, because we are continually seeing our leaders, whether or not they're leaders of our companies, leaders of our religion, or leaders of our government institutions, we're continually seeing our leaders echo dubious and demonstrate dubious behaviors. And those are permeating more and more into society. And I believe dubious is currently significantly winning over credible. All right, so let me give how did I come to that conclusion? Well, you could just be in the world and you could tell, but let's put that aside for a second. I interviewed 500 thought leaders. I did not interview people who were your average people. They're people who were smart, capable, thought leadership focused. In their spaces, they were well-recognized brands. Okay. Now, when I would do the interviews, I would send out a 16-minute video ahead of time and said, hey, this is how you can practice. This is how you get prepared for this interview. Because remember, part of being credible is you come prepared. So here's a 60-minute video. And the first question I'm going to ask is, what is your CPOP? What is your customer point of possibilities? Now, what I'm going to say is, if you're credible, one of the characteristics of being credible is being a servant leader. If you're a servant leader, you should know who you serve, right? That seems kind of obvious, right? You should know who you serve. And if you're serving an audience, you should also know what is the pain point you're either helping them get over, or what is the pleasure point you want them to achieve. That is the concept of a CPOP. And a CPOP is an expression you could use that would allow you to articulate, let's do it in more playful terms, the playground you play in 10 words or less. So what happened is, I interviewed 500 thought leaders, and even after so by the way, some did not come prepared, some came late, there's all these silly statistics that came out of doing the interviews. In fact, I'll dive in for a second. 23% of the interviewees came late. Today I was actually rude, but I had permission. Late is you come within 3 minutes of start time. Rude is that you come after the start time. 4% of the people I interviewed came after the show was scheduled to go live. 4%. Right? 2% didn't show up. Zero integrity. They just didn't show up and never let me know about it. Right? So what was fascinating, though, is that 98%, this is 98% of those people I interviewed, could not articulate their CPOP. They could not articulate who they served and how they served them in 10 words or less without throwing in some marketing cookie cutter stuff, because the dubious nature of who we are is when you get the stage, we're supposed to tell people who we are and why they want to buy our product. So Swanette, when somebody says, who are you? The truth is, for most of us, they don't really care who you are. What they care about is who you are in terms of you serving them. How can you be of value to me? That's really the question. When somebody says, who are you? They're really saying, hey, how can you be of value to me? Right? That's really the question. And so if you can articulate that concept called a CPOP, and you do it in such a way where you're not selling. So let me share mine. Mine is interesting, and that is the thing I focus on, the thing I'm excited about, the playground I play in. CEOs not yet flying like eagles. So CEOs not yet flying like eagles. And when I'm talking to somebody and I share that, what was fascinating to me here, I gotta share this. So I came up with a CPOP, and my first thought was to keep it 4 words: CEOs flying like eagles. So I was actually in a room with 80 people who were my target audience. And when I said CEOs flying like eagles, I got okay response, because just like, are you ready? People think they're credible, people think they're accountable. CEOs think they already fly like eagles, right? It's a natural thing. So I changed it in the middle of sharing it with others. And when I said CEOs not yet flying like eagles, that's when I got when Spock of Star Trek would raise his eye, right? That's when I'd get the curious, oh, what do you mean? What is flying like eagles? Or I think I do that, but Mitchell, tell me more, right? That's when I got, because really, if you could share in less than 10 words, if you could actually share your playground, who you serve and how you serve them, who you serve and what they want, really. It's the who and the what, who you serve and what they want. If you could share that in seconds, the person who is listening, who's either a prospect or a referral partner, is going to ask you to tell them more. And so what happened is I realized the simplicity of that. I also realized that I can train other people to be certified CPOP specialists. So if I can find something so simple, to me, simple is not always easy. If I could find something so simple and train other people to do it, then the question that came to my mind is, well, what else about credibility did I unravel that we've been taught wrong throughout the years? That's when I kind of woke up and said, I got a life mission. And that is not, I just want to, my previous life mission was start companies, make money, rent a house in Europe once a month for a year, once a year for a month. Sorry. Once a month for a year. Oh, that'd be kind of cool. But that's a physical impossibility. So once a year for a month, we'd rent a house in Europe. We'd invite friends and family. That seemed like a pretty good life. I thought that was my life mission. It wasn't until I did the research and I saw the state of where thought leaders were, and in articulating the audience they serve, that I realized there's a whole lot of lessons that we, even if we've been taught, we've allowed the dubiousness of life to overcome them. And so that was that turning point. And it's kind of cool. I could point to a month. I can't point to a specific day, but I could point to a month when I realized that needed to be the purpose for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with that. Like, if you see and you use this balance, where is the nation, or where is society at the moment? And if you ask people, do they really want to live a life in a dubious nation, or do they really want to be in a credible nation? I think most of the people would say, of course, credible, with knowing each other deeply, being very open, being also showing up vulnerable and like being truthful and trusted and of course liked, but they don't live that. And this comes back to how we were taught as children, what kind of experiences we made during our lifetime until now, and how can we create this kind of different future, as we all, I think, have this longing that it can't go on like it is now. Like from my point of view, it can't. Yes, there will be a crash, I think, in every system. If it is in the environment, in our social system, in our economic system, we are running like on an edge to where there is no stopping anymore. So, or perhaps from my point of view, it could also be that we are on this crossroad to decide either we go into this totally dubious technocratic way or in this credible and magical way for in my terms. Yeah, and people have this longing. What do you think about that?
Well, I wanted to, you start off by saying, hey, if you ask yourself if you want to be credible or if you and live life credibly, everyone's going to say yes. And I want to give I want to talk about two surveys I did on LinkedIn, right? And so the first survey was, are you accountable? And if you're accountable, are you accountable by yourself, or do you have a partner or a coach, or do you not care about accountability at all? So 3% of people said they don't care about accountability. By the way, I try to avoid that, people. When 63% said they were accountable by themselves, I realized I asked the wrong question. Okay, so then I asked the next. So imagine I'm talking. I've got a good following on LinkedIn, and imagine I got a statistically significant response rate, and 63% of people say they're accountable by themselves. Okay, and I then asked the next question, which was, in your network, what percentage of people are accountable? Then I put in a number of different percentages, but one of the percentages is 100% of the time. So the people who are in your network that you associate with, that you do business with, how many are actually accountable 100% of the time? And that number was only 10%. So how could 63% of people say they're self-accountable, but the people in your network are only 10% accountable? Like there's a disconnect. And what happens is we lie to ourselves. Okay, I'll use a more subtle term. We justify to ourselves why we promised something but didn't get it done. We lie to ourselves, right? And the same is true with credibility. We're going to say we're credible versus dubious. When stuff comes at the end, though, are we vulnerable when we need to tell that story and somebody can learn? Are we coachable? Did we learn from somebody? Like was this valuable, helpful? Did we do something right? Did we add as much value to the people we were with as we could have? And at the end of the day, like I'll give a different example. I'm typically having between 30 and 50 calls a week, not all client calls, just people who I'm learning and getting to know. And I often have people respond back, well, what's the purpose? Well, in my invite, I say, this is just good old fashioned networking. Just 30 minutes, we get to know each other, and then we'll see if there's something of value. I've had people say, no, I'm too busy right now. Or I've had people say, well, I don't know the ROI of meeting with you, so I'm not going to. I'm like, okay, right? There are times where you can't, it just doesn't make sense. But what aha moment might have come out of that for me or that other person if we did meet and they came open, right? It's interesting to me the way people are in life, and the fact that we're taught that doing time management, being very focused, getting stuff done, making money, that money is more important. Like I run into people who are making six figures. and they're not happy because they want to make 7. I run into people making 7 figures and they're not happy because they want to make 8. I run into people who are making less than $1,000 a year or less than $10,000 a year, and they're happy, right? It's not a money thing. Like if you have food and shelter taken care of, it's not a money thing. Now, would incremental money help somebody who's not making a lot? Yeah, significantly. But we're just not taught these things. And so I think what happens is, I'm going to now bring it back to CPOP. When you know your CPOP, you know who you're playing with, you know the world you play with. That compass you have is really focused. And so you and I talked about your CPOP. Do you remember what it is? Do you want me to share it in the chat so you can?
You want me to write it in the chat?
Yeah. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Cool. Now, while she's writing, what I'm going to say is, and this is really fascinating, is I truly believe when I can help somebody articulate the who and the what, the who they serve and what do they do for that person in 10 words or less, it represents their vibrational energy. It represents the frequency of who they are. They often are feeling really good about it when they share, right? And the interesting part to me is I've now done this over 1,000 times, and I have a 1-hour course. If you're interested in Credibility Nation, we have a 1-hour course that helps people do that. And when I'm talking to somebody and I allow them, I'm listening to their words and I allow them to be able to express the frequency of who they are, how they serve. They're feeling so good about themselves. The interesting part is that 98, let's see, 98? No, sorry. I got lost because I saw your chat message and it caused me to just get distracted. So I'm going to ignore that for a second. 90% of the 1,000 people I worked with, they end up forgetting their CPOP somewhere between 2 hours and 2 weeks. And it's interesting to me, they forget it because the world continues to bombard them with dubious messages and they want to bring them back to normal. So part of one of my learning lessons is I need to focus on the 10%, not the 90%. Right? Because I need to focus on the people who are ready, willing, interested. And that's also another new aha moment for me. Is when people are ready to go, now they need help getting there. I call that CPOPing.
Yeah, so I think but this is also a kind of a process. Like when I started thinking about how can I condense this, what I'm doing and with whom I'm working into less than 10 words, it's like, okay, try again and again and again. And it changed and changed. And still, these are more than 10 words, I see.
Well, I see. So here's what's interesting. You've got yours up to 12.
Yeah.
And the one that I wrote down when you and I were talking was at 7.
Yeah. So.
Right. And so let's share both.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong. This is yours, not mine. Right. Let's share both. And the audience, hey, listen, if you like one versus another, tell what you like. Can you read? Do you want to read both? Why not? I'm just curious if you want to read them both. And you could just say, this is the one that I came up with, or you can say, here's the original, and then here's the one I came up with. Why don't we do that? Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah. So then I have to open LinkedIn, as I don't have this on my other chat.
Oh, it's in your chat. So it's I put it in chat so you could, because you put yours in and I put one above that.
Okay, so then we have both. Okay. Yeah, mine is what I have shared was like mission-driven millionaires tapping into their magnificence to lead the paradigm shift. And you shared mission-driven millionaires driving their epic mission. So for me, this mission was double. So I put this out because it's about the paradigm shift, as mission is already at the beginning of the sentence.
That's interesting. I like the beginning and end, but I see what you did. I like, so anyhow, you could decide which one you like better. If you're in the audience, mission-driven millionaires driving their epic mission. I'll tell you why I like that one still. The other one is mission-driven millionaires stepping into their magnificent to lead the paradigm shift. I like, so personally, I still like, I'm sure we could do wordsmithing if it's neither of the two. I still like less than 10 words. There's something about both of those are different, by the way. So the one that I created is the one that is focused on they're already there. They're already doing something. Right? The one that you said is, oh, they haven't done anything before, so they have to step into it. And then the word the paradigm shift references that there's one and only one paradigm shift. Right? So there's at the end of the day, it comes down to, first of all, I like that we like mission-driven millionaires. Right? That's really cool. Right? So it may be worthwhile to do a survey of mission-driven millionaires. And even if you did 10-minute interviews with them, just, hey, what are you thinking about every day? What's important? What are you doing? Like, just open-ended listening, that something will pop out for them. The reason I liked the word, for those who are not seeing this, what I ended up doing is I ended up having the word epic in all caps. Because if you could use epic as an acronym, now you can come up with 4 things that you do with your mission-driven millionaires, helping them drive their epic mission. And it's easier for me. So for me, I as a potential recommender, as someone who loves you, the stepping into their magnificence to lead the paradigm shift, I wouldn't recommend you, because I don't really know what that is. Right? And I'm not saying mine is right. So there's not a Mitchell's right and other people are wrong thing. If you really owned the fact that mission-driven millionaires need guidance along the way, need support, driving that's the paradigm shift thing. I don't get it yet, right? But driving their mission. So the reason I ended up with their epic mission, they've probably driven many missions in their lives, but their epic mission is their life mission. Like me, I have my epic mission right now, right? So if I said, what do you mean? You would say, well, Mitchell, you have a life goal, tipping the scale. That's your epic mission. I'm like, yes, it is. Right. And then we immediately, so if you could think about, like, how would you support me in my epic mission? Right. If that generates thought processes. What I love about this conversation right now is you and I are just talking. We just happen to have a recording on, but we're talking about how do you show up playing in your playground? And you want to create a playground, no matter what it's called. You want to create a playground that invites me either as a prospect into the playground, or potentially even better, given all the people I talk to, that invites me as a referral partner to recommend people to your playground. So what you have to do, whatever it is, make it just not intellectually brilliant. You have to make it so simple that I'm interested to join. So we'll step away from you for a second. Let's talk about eagles. Okay. The reason I picked this word, so eagle is an acronym, right? So I can walk through what is an E and an A and a G. As a matter of fact, why don't we do that, right? So first we'll do the bigger picture. What's the eagles are great at? Well, they fly sometimes above the clouds, but they fly. They have excellent vision, 10x typically human vision. They're very focused on their family. And by the way, what they do when an eaglet is ready to get kicked out of the nest, they actually kick the eaglet out of the nest and then fly next to them. And if the eaglet does not fly, they catch it on the back and bring it back. So they actually are truly, that may sound like it's a bad thing, but they're truly letting their family experiment, grow, be on their own. They're doing it for the right reason. And they are very family focused. So what does that mean? In terms of the E, it's that, well, let me summarize first. When I'm done working with a CEO for a year, they recognize that they work for the employees versus the other way around. That's a summary. Okay. Now, if I'm focused on the E, it's the empowering the employees to actually deliver on the vision that the CEO and the executive staff has. Right, that's the first thing. And you know how many people talk about mission, vision, it's as simple as a corporate CPOP. Second is activate the hidden talent inside the company. So if everyone had their own CPOP and we knew what it was and talked to about it and was honest about it, at the moment, I'll let my team jockey their positions as they learn what they like doing and doing it better. The G is generating true community inside the company. It's crazy that we don't do that. We've lost the concept of community, and certainly inside company, we all wear these shells and we hide, right? And then the L is interesting. The L is leverage. It's leveraging the stakeholders. So it's not just the employees, which is an important stakeholder. It's the customers. It's our service providers, which are also partners. It's the investors. It's basically leveraging all the stakeholders to be behind that overall vision of the CEO. And then what do we also ultimately deliver? We earn more respect. We earn better results. We earn more love. Right. So when I walk through what is an eagle, I can go through details. Sometimes it's as simply as, hey, how would it feel as a CEO of the company if your employees are doing things that you didn't expect, that fits in the mission going on, or even sometimes extends your mission because they did something that felt like the right thing to do? There isn't a CEO in the world, to me, that wouldn't get excited about that. And if they're not excited about that, they're old school. They need to retire, or they need to learn how to process in the new way of doing business, right? And so for you, I'd want to recommend you, if you can talk about what does epic mean, right? So come up with those focuses on epic. I want to recommend you when I can hear you talk about, hey, you could help me in my epic mission, whether it's mission or something else, right? It's that playground, and it's you're not starting me on the mission. You're adding value at different parts based on what I understand of you. You're adding value on different parts along the way. So anyway, we need this every now and then. We need somebody to look at what we're doing and give feedback. How does that feel based on what I just said?
I think that most people are absolutely not aware of their CPOP, and they are not aware of what they truly bring into the world. As like, especially for companies, there's a marketing agency that is writing out their mission or whatever it is, but it doesn't come truly from the heart of the people who are part of this company or the partners that are in there. So it's just like made up in the mind, perhaps even not of the CEOs or the employees at all, but what I sometimes hear is, if you enter this door, please leave your emotions behind. Yeah, so they are not welcome here. And we are really seeing who we are when we show up credible, and how we can really change also the environment of our companies we work in or work with, our partners, and yeah, bring out the mission that we all, I think everybody has kind of a mission inside of them. Perhaps they are not aware, but there is something that is kind of whispering in the brain or in the head somehow. So I think it is super important as well.
And it's so let me just reinforce what you just said, which is powerful. I'm going to say the answer is yes. You were born into this planet to do something. So what is it? And that something cannot come from your head. It has to come from your heart. We'll leave it at that. You were born into this world to do something. And what is that something that's coming from your heart that you can have fun, add value, obviously make money, whatever it is that's important, or maybe it's not money. It's you need to make value. Value sometimes can be in the form of money or something else, but it's how can you add value to those around you in such a way where you're benefiting and those around you are benefiting from you. That's from your heart. That's not from your head.
Yeah, and especially I think in these moments where so much change is happening, and you said at the beginning that now artificial intelligence will be part of our life. This is something, of course, we never had before, and we are not even trained to deal with ourselves. How can we deal with something that will become intelligent, is already intelligent, is trained by us? So I would like to get some thoughts about what you think about this artificial intelligence coming up, and when we as humans train this artificial intelligence and then it starts training itself, can it be part of, you use the word Cree dust, I think, it's like creating this movement of becoming a credible nation. What do you think about that?
Wow, those are two different, significantly different thoughts. I'm going to put the cred dust and credible nation on the side for a second and focus on the first part of it. And you could bring that other stuff back if you want. What you were referring to is a place that may happen quickly, but is not today. So let me define that and tell you what we can do today. What you were referring to is that point of singularity. It's that point of time, for instance, in the Terminator movies when Starnet is turned on, right? We've had many science fiction movies. AI has been around as a term for 60 years. What I will say, it is actually here, but let's whether or not it's artificial intelligence, machine learning, regenerative learning. Let's do it in a much more practical level. You're in business and you're running a business. You know, the most important thing is to work on your business, not in your business. At first, you got to work in your business. You got to learn. You got to figure out what's going on. But as you grow, you're going to hire people to work in your business so you can continue to work on your business. Okay. Now, a lot of times, for me as a publisher, I currently still have 13 people working for me, and some of them are writers. And I pay money for them to create stuff out of thin air and write. Well, they are superfluous at the moment because I have this, I'm paying the $20 a month for ChatGPT, and ChatGPT can write everything I need to write. I don't need my writers anymore. Now, thing is, if I fire all my writers and I do it myself, I'm now working in the business again. So what do I need to do? Either hire new people, or I need to train my existing writers how they can use ChatGPT so they can be more efficient. Right? So I'm currently in the middle of training a number of them. And the problem is that it's not the way we're learned. It's not the way we're trained. We just don't think this way. So I'm going to share a term. This is a term that across the world, we all need to be. So I'll step back for a second. When we're born, we're marketers. When we're born, we're salespeople. First time you cry and you want to be held, you're a salesperson. Hey, look at me. I want you to hold me, mom, dad, right? We all are in customer service. I mean, by definition, those are we've segregated those, and we say, hey, you should do customer service, but we do all of them. There's one more thing that I need to add to that. We all need to be prompt engineers. Prompt engineers are a person who knows how to ask the right question, and when the information comes back, to be questioning the information and to try to continue to ask more to fine tune it and then verify its accuracy. So when I'm training my writers to write, I had one of my guys started writing articles on a CEO's credibility, and started posting them in the group we have called Credibility Nation. And I'm like, hey, we need to talk. So as we talk, I'm like, so how much of this did you write yourself? Oh, zero. It's 100% ChatGPT. By the way, that's the power. ChatGPT, you ask the right question, you get a response. I go, the problem with you sharing this as is you're not credible to share this as is. It's great content. But it's not your content. It's just content that was pulled together. You asked the right question, but you don't feel the answers. So I'd rather you share content that's more on the level that's credible to you. I'd rather, if you're going to be sharing content at that level, you could say, hey, I listened to Mitchell interview these 3 thought leaders, and this is the summary of what I heard them say. If you said that, I'd believe it. I just don't believe you writing a really cool article on accountability, for instance, right? Because you're not in that world. And by the way, you don't do it yet yourself, right? So the thing is, the first inclination of somebody who really wants to learn and grow, they've not been taught how to be prompt engineers. They've not been taught how to be discerning on the information coming back. They've not been taught, because we don't teach this, by the way. A computer gives us an answer, we think it's the answer, right? Now, the thing that's fascinating to me is we have at our fingertips millions of writers. And you don't have to pay ChatGPT anything, and there are other tools you can use as well. I'm paying the $20 a month. I had millions of writers at my fingertips. The other day, I had a great example. I was interviewed by a firm, and the interview worked really well, and they ended up getting a lot of press from me. And the guy who did the interview was very low. I don't know what low level means these days, but he was the interviewer at the bottom rung. Still was a nice guy. I really liked him. He did a good job. And he asked me for a LinkedIn recommendation. In the past, I would have probably just ignored it, right? Because I only had really 2 or 3 interactions with him, and one which was the interview itself, and I didn't know what to say. Instead, let me tell you what I did. I trained ChatGPT on who I am. I then trained ChatGPT on who he is by grabbing content from his About section of LinkedIn and from a website that he created. And I said, if I was going to write a recommendation based on 1 or 2 interactions, and I really like this guy, but I can't make it flowery, what would I say? And I went back and forth 2 or 3 times with my now newly hired writer, ChatGPT, and I came up with something I felt comfortable with. The whole process took maybe 10, 15 minutes. So instead of creating from scratch, it was very powerful, but something that was not overdone, not flowering. I did not accept, if I accepted the first write-up, it wouldn't have worked for me, right? So that's what's interesting. We now have access. It's like first time we actually had the opportunity to have a calculator. First time as cavemen, we learned what fire was and how to cook food versus eating it raw. It's like there's all these, the during the dot-com days, I was that guy who would go to CEOs and VP of operations and say, you know, this is new technology and it's going to let us talk directly to our customers. It's going to let us drop ship products from our subcomponent manufacturer directly to our customer. I was physically walked out of the offices of two companies. Well, let me tell you, there's a new technology that will empower you to do whatever you need to do if you ask the right questions and you focus on it. So the concept of content, the concept of information is no longer valuable. You will not get hired because you have content. You're not get hired because you have information. You will be hired because you know how to use it. You'll get hired because you know how to ask the right questions and to be able to do something powerful for somebody else. And so I'm not talking about the point of singularity. That's something else. I'm just talking about today, what can you do in your industry, in your profession, in whatever it is that you focus on? How could you use the fact that you now have at your fingertips six-figure writers and thousands of them at your fingertips to use, right? We have democratized the writing profession. By the way, here's something scary. You don't need to hire a programmer anymore. Writing a program is now available. You ask the right questions to ChatGPT, it'll write the program for you. So what's the benefit of the program? Well, you still need somebody to integrate that program with other databases, and you know, whether or not using Zapier or some other tool, you still need that, but you don't need to hire the programmer anymore because now you just ask the right question. So as every industry gets turned upside down, are you asking the right questions, receiving the information that's coming back, and applying that to the situations, actually applying that to your CPOP, applying that to who you serve and what pain point they want to solve or pleasure point they're looking to address?
Yeah, and I would also ask, so if there is kind of an ethical aspect using, for example, artificial intelligence, as you said, one thing is if I write something and then help ChatGPT to make it better or to make it more precise, or asking how would you write it and then use my own words to put it in, rather than telling, okay, write it, I take it as mine and share it with the community and tell it it's mine. So do you think that there is a kind of this ethical aspect also coming in?
Oh, significant. It's really hard. I give you an example of the ethical side. When somebody who teaches at a university level in his 20s is writing CEO quality content, I had a ethical issue of him publishing it. Sorry, not going to work. This is not, you can't write this stuff under your pen name because you don't have this information. Ethically, if I let you continue to do this, this is a problem. Now, there may be people go, wait, my people are writing great stuff. It's attracting attention. Let's keep it going. It doesn't feel right. So ethically, there are some very interesting dilemmas, you know, and I don't know if we don't really know the answers, right? It's because it's, if, for instance, people go to war, they lose a leg. Now you get an artificial leg and you can walk again. Great. Does that make you not human? Right? Would you rather go in a wheelchair, use crutches, or get a second leg and potentially be able to walk? Well, we're going to want to walk. If I can write something in, typically what I'm doing is I'm finding things which are saving me a day or a week worth of effort. I can now go into ChatGPT and get an entire marketing plan. And I could spend time, a good example, I've got a networking group of people who are credible. And we're putting together a book of their capabilities. Well, I spent with a person who's primarily driving. I spent with them, we spent an hour and a half crafting the right questions to ask. I sat down with somebody else from the team, and once they trained ChatGPT on who they are, it took him 10 minutes to then ask those same questions to get the same quality results. So and this is about him as a person. If he was making up who him was, that's an ethical thing, right? But that's like anyone who lies on their resume or LinkedIn or, right? It's a really interesting world that we live in. And to me, a good example is I've got 10 people who can now spend 10 minutes versus an hour and a half. And this is an hour and a half from two smart people. They can now spend 10 minutes and we're going to have something really powerful. Right. And that sort of work wasn't really possible before. We're at a very beautiful time. The transformation that's going to happen in the next 20 years will be as significant as the transformation that has happened between the .com days and now. It's just going to be exacerbated because it's not limited to, it is so broad, so horizontal in its consequences. And so people who really can focus on their audience and apply today's technology to their audience, they're going to win.
Absolutely. And you are helping these people to do that? Okay, can you let us know how you're doing that? And also, like, if people want to reach out to you, so let's go into that. How can you help people with that? And if they want to call you or send you a message, how can they reach out to you?
So we'll start with my website. So it's mitchelllevy.com. So that's 3 L's back to back. You can learn all the different tools, techniques, depending on where you are in your process. And you can book time on the calendar. So that's mitchelllevy.com. You know, at the high end, it's executive coaching. And that's typically one-on-one, either 2, 3, or 4 times a month where we meet. And it's really helping you move from, I'm not even going to say from A to B. It's moving you from A to someplace that you may have it identified, or you may need to really articulate, you know, you need help sort of saying what's next, right? And so that executive coaching is the higher end. The tool that we do once a quarter, which I find very fascinating, it's called Ultimate Credibility Bootcamp. So ultimatecredibilitybootcamp.com. It's a way in which this is very fascinating. When you sign up, you then get to take the CPOP course, 1 hour asynchronous course, and you get to articulate your CPOP. And although it's spanning over a 4-day period, the primary content on day 1 is how do you show up in the room and you show up credibly. Next one, when I hear you talk about what you're doing in the 4 stages of EPIC to help people with their missions, that makes it easier for me to recommend you. And I run across your audience all the time, right? So day 1, how do you show up credibly? Day 2, how can you show credibility in the first 10, 15 seconds when you're not in the room? So how do you show up asynchronously credibly? That's your social media, that's your website. So that's day 2. So, you know, for those who want to go through either as bring your team, we've got a team of 6 coming through in the next boot camp. You want to bring your team or want to come individually, we do this once a quarter. Just go to ultimatecredibilitybootcamp.com and you will learn not just how to articulate the who and the what, how to apply it in terms of how you show up individually as a human when you're with somebody, and whether you're with them virtually or physically, and how do you do it when you're not in a room, right? If I'm going to recommend somebody, not only do I want them to have a consistent CPOP, a consistent outlook in life, but I want to recommend, I don't want to, you've probably heard people say this, hey, this person, the best website designer ever, just don't look at their website, it sucks, right? No, that doesn't work anymore, right? So I want you to show up when you're not in a room as credibly as you show up when you're in the room. And the Ultimate Credibility Bootcamp does that.
Okay, so I will put the links in the show notes that it is very easy for people to just click and come into your world and get your support and being inspired by what you're doing. I'm sure people who already listened to this podcast are now very excited to step into this. And last but not least, is there anything that you would like to share that I didn't ask you?
You did a great job. So let me summarize the things you asked that are powerful. We are born in this world to do something. If you don't know what it is, figure it out. If you're not of service to those people around you that you need to be, it's now time to do that. If you are, is it the right thing for you to do? Are you comfortable with it? So let's figure out who we are and how we serve. And life is about to change across the world for everybody. So how are you using it? Let's ignore that thing called the singularity moment. Let's just focus on you personally. If you have access to every piece of data in the world, access to every single good writer in the world, you have access to every single case study in the world of how things have done in the past, how can you serve your audience better with all that information at your fingertips? What are you going to do differently? That's what I want to make sure that if you're going to summarize everything that we talked about, the power is in your control to show up in a way that I call it credible, but show up in a way that you're credible, of service to others, in a way that people want to recommend you. That's a great life worth living.
Wow, powerful last words. Thank you so much, Mitchell, to be my guest today and sharing everything that you shared. And yeah, hope to speak to you soon again.
My honor. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening or watching my podcast, Holistic Creators. If you want to know more about how I can help and support you, have a look at my website, spiritualchangemaker.com. You can also join my Facebook group, Spiritual Changemakers Community. Stay tuned for the next episode by subscribing to this channel. And you also can check the previous episodes.